My ex-husband told his affair partner he left me because I was a useless housewife, and it turned out to be the exact thing that finally made me happy. I lied. We're going somewhere, my 18-year-old daughter Chelsea told me while grinning because she'd lied that we would order takeout and watch Netflix. You said we were watching bad comedies, I said, looking at the workout clothes she was throwing my way. I should have known you were lying to me. Chelsea never just sat in bed and watched movies. She threw on her Gymshark hoodie and sat next to me. We can still get takeout later, but right now you're going to spin class with me. When I said I didn't feel like it, she reminded me that I was happy before I met her father, so I can be happy after him too. It's been 15 months. You deserve to love yourself again. I started wrestling my phone off her while she was booking the class. I can't do it. But she tied my hair so it wouldn't get in my eyes and grabbed my shoulders. The class starts in 30. You'll sweat the sad out, listen to the bad gym music, talk to fellow moms, and forget about dad and the stupid untrue things he said. Got it? I looked at her uncertain. And if you won't do this for you, then do it for me. I need my fun mom back. The one who danced in the kitchen while making pancakes. The one who made up silly songs about laundry. You were the most joyful person I knew, Mom. Dad didn't take that from you. He just made you forget it was there. I sighed and pulled on the leggings. These probably don't even fit anymore. Mom, you're beautiful. You've always been beautiful. Dad left because he's an idiot who thinks ambition only looks like a LinkedIn profile. At the spin class, I tried to hide in the back row, but Chelsea dragged me to the middle. Best bikes, she whispered. That's when I noticed him. The man on the bike next to mine. Salt and pepper hair, kind eyes. He looked straight out of a Wattpad novel. He smiled warmly. First time? Is it that obvious? I laughed nervously. The terror in your eyes gave it away. He grinned. I'm Alric. During class, we kept catching each other's eye. When I struggled with the resistance, he mouthed, "You got this." When the instructor called for sprints, I mouthed back, "Help me." We both started laughing. After class, as everyone filtered out, I found myself lingering. Alric was stretching by the weights. Hey, I said, surprising myself. I was thinking of trying some weights. Mind if I join you? I have no idea what I'm doing. His face just lit up. I'd love the company, but fair warning, I'm more of a slow and steady guy than these CrossFit types. Perfect. Slow and steady is exactly my speed. We were laughing about my attempt at split squats when I heard the voice that used to make me feel small. Oh my god, this is rich. My ex-husband stood there in his designer gym clothes, his new girlfriend nowhere in sight. Look at you, trying so hard. New workout clothes, flirting with random men, pretending you're not the same boring housewife I lived with for 20 years. Alric stepped back respectfully but stayed close. Chelsea moved toward us from across the gym. You know what you should tell this guy? My ex pointed at Alric. Tell him the truth. That you have no career, no ambition, no goals. You're just a housewife who thinks making dinner is an accomplishment. Making dinner for your mother was an accomplishment, I said sarcastically. Please. You spent 20 years doing nothing, sitting at home, living off my success. And now you're here, trying to convince yourself you're more than a pathetic woman whose only skill is folding laundry. Chelsea appeared beside me, her face flushed with anger. Are you seriously doing this right now? Chelsea, your mother needs to hear. No, you need to hear this, Dad. She managed your entire life for 20 years. She made you look like a successful family man while you couldn't remember our birthdays. That's not a career. She raised me to speak 3 languages while you spoke 0 to me most days. She managed 5 investment accounts that you took credit for. She hosted every client dinner that got you promoted. She made you look stable enough that anyone would trust you with their business. Alric spoke up. Wait, let me understand this. You're mocking her for being devoted to her family? For maintaining a household? For raising what seems to be an incredible daughter? A woman on the elliptical called out, did he just say taking care of a family isn't work? Has this man ever tried to keep a house running? The spin instructor walked over. Sir, she's been coming here with her daughter for 1 day and already has more friends than you seem to. Maybe the problem isn't her. My ex's face was turning red. You're missing the point. She has no ambition. I have plenty of ambition, I interrupted, my voice steady now. I wanted to raise good humans. I wanted a beautiful home. I wanted family dinners at 7. I love waking up at 5:30 to pack lunches. I love keeping my home organized. I love being the mom who shows up to everything. That was my ambition. I'm a housewife, and I'm proud of it. Alric smiled like he was looking at a unicorn. The gym had gone quiet, everyone staring at my ex with disgust. This is pathetic, he sputtered, backing toward the door. You're all pathetic. He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Then he sent me a text, my address. He was speeding to my home and I had no idea why. My phone screen blurred as my hands started shaking and Chelsea grabbed it from me to read the address he'd sent. She pulled out her own phone and started dialing 911 while everyone in the gym seemed to freeze around us. Alric moved closer and asked if we needed him to follow us home for safety. The spin instructor was already walking toward the front desk, calling out for Octavia Downs, the gym manager, to come document everything that had just happened. My chest felt tight as I realized this wasn't just embarrassment anymore, but something that felt like a real threat. Chelsea was talking fast to the dispatcher, explaining about the confrontation and the text with our address, but I could hear frustration creeping into her voice. The dispatcher told her that since he hadn't actually shown up at the house yet, we should call the non-emergency line instead, though they would log the incident and the threatening text. Chelsea hung up and grabbed my arm, reminding me that having a paper trail mattered even if the police couldn't do anything right now. Alric stepped forward and offered to be a witness if we needed one for any reports or legal stuff. Octavia appeared and immediately ushered us into her small office behind the reception desk. She pulled out an incident report form and started writing down everything that had happened, from when my ex walked in to when he stormed out. The woman from the elliptical had followed us and gave her contact information without being asked. 2 other gym members who had been lifting weights nearby also offered their names and numbers as witnesses. Octavia assured me the gym would file a formal incident report and ban him permanently if he ever tried to come back. She said member safety was their top priority, and they had zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. After she finished documenting everything, Alric walked us out to our car, keeping a respectful distance but clearly concerned about our safety. He pulled out his phone and gave me his number, making it clear it was strictly for witness purposes if we needed anything for legal documentation. Chelsea thanked him for standing up for me earlier, and for not making this weird, or trying to take advantage of the situation. We got in the car and I immediately called my neighbor Judith Schroeder while Chelsea started the engine. Judith and I had been friends for 8 years, ever since she brought cookies when we first moved in. I explained quickly what had happened and asked if she could keep an eye out for my ex's black BMW. She didn't hesitate, saying she'd sit by her front window and text me immediately if she saw anything suspicious. Just knowing someone was watching made me feel less alone and vulnerable. Chelsea took a different route home than usual, going through the back streets instead of the main road. We circled our block twice, both of us scanning for his car. On the second pass, Chelsea spotted it first, pointing to a black BMW parked 3 houses down from ours with the engine still running. My stomach dropped and I felt sick as I realized he had actually come to the house. Chelsea kept driving past without slowing down and parked around the corner where he couldn't see us. My phone buzzed with a text from Judith saying she could see him from her window. We sat in the car waiting while she sent updates every few minutes. She said he looked angry, gripping the steering wheel, but he never got out of the car. After about 10 minutes, she texted that he had just sped off, tires squealing as he left. We waited another 20 minutes before finally driving back to our house. Chelsea checked all the doors and windows while I stood in the kitchen, still shaking. That night, after we'd eaten some leftover pasta and tried to calm down, I sat at the kitchen table composing a text to him. My hands were still trembling, but Chelsea sat beside me, helping me word it firmly and clearly. I typed that all future communication had to be in writing only, and he could not come to the house without prior arrangement. I added that showing up unannounced would be considered harassment, and I would document everything. Chelsea made me screenshot the text before and after I sent it, plus his original message with our address. We created a new folder on my phone just for documentation, and she showed me how to back it up to the cloud. After sending the message, we sat at the table making a list of security improvements we needed immediately. First on the list was changing all the locks since he might still have copies of keys. Chelsea found a locksmith online who had good reviews and could come first thing tomorrow morning. We needed a doorbell camera so we could see who was at the door without opening it. Chelsea found one with night vision and motion detection that could arrive with next day delivery if we ordered within the hour. We added a full security system to the list, though that would be more expensive and take longer to install. Chelsea researched different companies while I looked up prices for motion sensor lights for the backyard. She found window alarms we could install ourselves and added those to our online cart. Taking action and making concrete plans helped me feel less helpless and more in control. Before bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart raced until I saw it was from Alric, just checking that we had made it home safely. Nothing pushy or inappropriate, just genuine concern. I replied with a simple thank you and that we were okay. He responded immediately with just 2 words and a period. The message said good and take care. It was nice knowing someone cared without wanting anything from us, or trying to insert himself into our situation. That night, I couldn't turn my brain off and kept getting up to check the locks even though Chelsea had already checked them twice. Every car that passed made me freeze and listen, wondering if it was him coming back. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook, writing down everything I could think of that needed to happen. Security cameras, new locks, maybe an alarm system, definitely a lawyer, and I needed to document everything from tonight. By 4, I had 3 pages of notes with arrows connecting different ideas and phone numbers I'd looked up on my phone. Chelsea found me there at 6, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups, and she didn't say anything, just started making scrambled eggs and toast. She put the plate in front of me and squeezed my shoulder while I ate, then sat down with her own breakfast, and pulled out her phone to help me organize my scattered notes into an actual plan. We made a shared calendar and started adding everything, from locksmith appointments to lawyer consultations. Lazarus Kent showed up at 9 sharp with his toolbox, and started on the front door first, working his way through every exterior door in the house. I ordered extra keys for Chelsea and Judith while he worked, watching him install the new deadbolts that looked way more solid than what we'd had before. The doorbell camera arrived around noon, and Chelsea immediately tore open the box, reading the instructions while I held the ladder for her. She connected it to both our phones, and we tested it over and over, me walking up to the door while she watched the feed from inside. Each successful test made my shoulders relax a tiny bit more. Later that afternoon, Judith stopped by with cookies, and mentioned her friend had used a lawyer named Theo Knight for her divorce, and he was really good with protective orders and harassment cases. I called his office right away, but the earliest they could see me was next week, which felt like forever. But at least it was something concrete on the calendar. Chelsea added it immediately with 3 reminder alerts. The week crawled by with me checking the camera feed constantly and jumping at every notification, but finally the day came for my appointment with Theo. His office was in a plain building downtown, and I sat in the waiting room clutching my folder of documentation, feeling like I might throw up from nerves. When he called me in, he was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with a calm way of talking that made me feel less crazy for being scared. He looked through everything I'd brought, the screenshots, the gym incident report Octavia had emailed me, the witness contact list, nodding as he read. He explained that we had solid grounds for a protective order based on the threatening behavior and the text with my address, and he could file the paperwork this week with a hearing probably in 2 weeks. Having an actual legal plan with dates and steps made everything feel more real, but also more manageable. 2 days later, I went to the police station with all my documentation to file a formal report, and the officer taking my statement actually seemed to care, especially when I showed her the gym's incident report backing up my story. She gave me a case number and said they'd add it to their system, which meant if anything else happened, there would already be a record. That same afternoon, Octavia called to tell me they'd officially issued a trespass notice banning my ex from the gym permanently, and if he showed up, they'd call the police immediately and press charges for trespassing. Knowing I had one completely safe place made a bigger difference than I expected. Of course, 3 days later, my ex sent an email claiming I was hiding important tax documents he needed urgently for his business and demanding to come to the house to get them. The email wasn't directly threatening, but it was aggressive and demanding, using lots of capital letters and exclamation points. I forwarded it to Theo immediately, and he said this was typical behavior, trying to find excuses for contact. Theo drafted a response saying any items could be retrieved through a supervised exchange with a complete inventory list submitted in advance and specific dates arranged through our lawyers. My ex replied within an hour, angry and calling this ridiculous. But when Theo mentioned in his next email that continued harassment would strengthen our case for the protective order, my ex agreed to the terms. Having a lawyer speak for me felt incredible, like I had a shield between me and his anger. Around this time, I finally called my insurance about therapy and got an appointment for the following week. The therapist was an older woman with kind eyes who listened while I explained everything, and she helped me see that being a housewife wasn't something shameful, but an actual choice that required real skills. She pointed out that I'd managed a complex household, raised an amazing daughter who spoke 3 languages, handled investments, hosted events that helped his career, and created a stable home for 20 years. These weren't just chores, they were actual accomplishments that took intelligence and dedication and skill. After my session, I felt lighter somehow, like maybe I hadn't wasted 20 years after all. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Alric asking if I'd like to grab coffee at the gym cafe after spin class next week, and he was really clear that it was just as friends with absolutely no pressure. He mentioned he'd gone through a divorce 5 years ago and understood needing time and space to figure things out. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back that coffee sounded nice. Chelsea found me in the kitchen that night making tea and pulled out the chair across from me with a look I'd seen before when she needed to talk about something serious. She wrapped her hands around her own mug and started picking at the handle while telling me she'd been thinking about her dad all day and how angry she still was about everything. I watched her face change as she worked through her feelings, her jaw getting tight when she mentioned how he'd embarrassed us at the gym and then shown up at our house like some kind of stalker. She said she needed to set her own rules with him and wouldn't meet him anywhere except public places from now on. Her voice got steady as she explained she wouldn't talk about me with him at all, because it wasn't his business anymore, what I did or who I spent time with. She'd already drafted a text to send him with her boundaries listed out clearly, and asked if I thought it was too harsh, but I told her it was perfect. Watching my daughter handle this so maturely made me realize she'd grown up more in the past year than I'd noticed. That night, I actually slept the whole way through without waking up once to check the locks or peek out the windows. The new deadbolt Lazarus installed made a solid click when I turned it, and the doorbell camera showed our empty porch clearly on my phone screen. Chelsea noticed the change at breakfast and said I looked less jumpy already, that my shoulders weren't up by my ears anymore. Small victories really did matter, and this was the first night I hadn't had nightmares about him breaking in. 3 days later, I sat in the courthouse waiting room with Theo while he went over what would happen when we saw the judge. The temporary protective order hearing only took 15 minutes, but the judge listened carefully as Theo presented the gym incident report and the threatening text. She granted the order immediately, requiring my ex to stay at least 100 yards away from me, our home, and the gym. The formal hearing would happen in 3 weeks, but having immediate protection made my hands stop shaking for the first time since the incident. Theo said our case was strong for making it permanent, especially with all the witnesses and documentation we'd collected. My phone buzzed that afternoon with screenshots from a mutual friend showing my ex's Facebook posts about being attacked and victimized at the gym by a mob of angry women. Several people had already commented calling him out for harassing me in public, and one person wrote that they'd seen the whole thing and he was lying. Chelsea saw me scrolling through them and took my phone away, telling me not to engage online at all no matter how much I wanted to defend myself. She was right, but seeing other people recognize his behavior for what it was felt validating even though I wished none of this was public. I spent the evening writing a simple email to a few close friends with just the basic facts about what happened. I didn't badmouth him or share all the ugly details, just explained we were divorced, there had been an incident, I had a protective order now, and I was safe. Most replied within hours with messages of support, and several offered to come stay with me if I needed company or help with anything. The next morning, my card got declined at the grocery store, which confused me until I checked my phone and saw he'd frozen our shared credit card account. Chelsea drove me straight to the bank where I opened my own checking account with the small amount of money I had in savings. Looking at the balance on the screen made my stomach drop, but Chelsea helped me write out a budget on a napkin while we sat in the car. We figured out I could manage the basics for now if I was careful, and getting my own account felt like cutting another string that tied me to him. Judith knocked on my door 2 days later, asking if I could help organize the neighborhood block party potluck, since I'd always coordinated them when I was married. It was a small thing, but using my organizational skills for something positive instead of just managing crisis after crisis felt good. I made spreadsheets for food assignments and created a schedule for setup and cleanup that had everything running smoothly. Several neighbors came up during the party to compliment how well organized everything was, and one woman said she'd missed having someone who actually knew how to plan these things. Coffee with Alric happened the next Thursday after spin class, and we sat in the gym cafe laughing about the instructor's terrible music choices. He told me stories about his first month at the gym when he couldn't figure out how to adjust the bike seat and ended up doing an entire class basically standing. We talked about movies and books and our kids, but never mentioned my ex once, which felt like a relief. He suggested we make it a regular thing, maybe coffee once a week after class with no pressure or expectations, just friendly conversation. Chelsea came to me the following week saying she needed to get her sports equipment from her dad's apartment but didn't want to go alone. We spent an hour planning a public handoff at a coffee shop downtown, with Judith agreeing to wait in the parking lot as backup just in case. Writing out the plan step by step helped Chelsea feel more in control of the situation instead of just reacting to whatever her dad might do. The actual handoff was nothing like we'd worried about as my ex showed up looking tired and smaller than I remembered. He gave Chelsea her gear bag and hockey sticks without saying much, and left quickly when he noticed Judith watching from her car. Chelsea said afterward that he seemed different somehow, less scary, and more just sad and ordinary. My therapist sat across from me the next week and pulled out a notepad while I told her about the coffee shop meeting. She started writing down all the things I'd done for 20 years and then circled each one: home organization, event planning, schedule management, budget tracking, meal planning. She asked if I'd ever thought about getting paid for these skills. I stared at the list and realized I'd never considered my daily life as marketable. That night, I spent 3 hours researching home organization services and personal assistant work. The rates people charged shocked me. Someone was making $60 an hour to do what I did every day for free. Chelsea found me surrounded by printouts and helped me organize them into folders. She said I could start small, maybe help neighbors first, then build from there. The idea of earning money from skills I already had made me feel less scared about my bank account. 3 days later at spin class, I walked straight to the middle row and claimed a bike without hesitation. The woman from the elliptical waved at me and took the bike next to mine. 2 other regulars nodded and smiled. The instructor gave me a thumbs up when she saw where I was sitting. This was my gym now, and I wasn't going to hide anymore. During the cool down, Alric mentioned the community center was struggling to organize their annual fundraiser. He knew the coordinator from his volunteer work and thought I might be able to help. It was unpaid, but could lead to other opportunities and would use exactly my skills. I told him I'd love to help, and he promised to connect us. That afternoon, Theo called me into his office to prepare for the protective order hearing next week. He spread out all our documentation on his desk: the gym incident report, witness statements, threatening texts, police reports. He explained the judge would ask me questions and I needed to stay calm and factual. My ex had hired a lawyer who might try to negotiate, but we were staying firm. I practiced my statement over and over in his office until I could say it without my voice shaking. He said I was ready and reminded me this was about my safety, not revenge. The courthouse hallway was cold, and I sat on a bench waiting for our case to be called. My ex's lawyer approached Theo and they talked quietly for a few minutes. The lawyer wanted to drop everything if we agreed to mutual no contact. Theo came back and asked what I wanted. I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds before deciding to proceed. I needed official protection, not just a handshake agreement. The lawyer looked annoyed but walked back to my ex and shook his head. 20 minutes later, we were in the courtroom and the judge reviewed all our evidence. My ex tried to interrupt twice, but his lawyer grabbed his arm both times. The judge asked me direct questions and I answered each one clearly. She granted the protective order for 1 year. My ex had to stay away from my home and the gym with contact limited to email only about essential matters. When my ex started to protest, his lawyer whispered something sharp and he went quiet. I walked out feeling both validated and completely drained. Chelsea was waiting in the parking lot and hugged me tight. 2 days passed before Chelsea got an email from her dad. She brought her laptop to my room and showed me the message. It seemed like a real apology for his behavior at the gym, and he wanted to rebuild their relationship. She spent an hour writing her response with clear boundaries about when and where they could meet. I stayed out of it but sat next to her while she typed. She told him public places only and no discussions about me. The community center fundraiser planning started the next week, and I basically took over within 3 meetings. The previous organizer had quit suddenly and left everything in chaos. I created spreadsheets, vendor lists, and volunteer schedules that had everyone impressed. The coordinator pulled me aside after the 4th meeting and mentioned they had a small budget for event planning next year. Would I be interested in a paid position? I said yes immediately, and she smiled. My ex's girlfriend sent me an email that surprised me with its respectful tone. She apologized for his behavior at the gym and offered to coordinate getting his remaining belongings from the garage. She seemed embarrassed by the whole situation and suggested a Saturday morning pickup. I agreed and asked Judith if she could be there as backup. Judith said she'd make sure to be visible in her front yard. Saturday arrived and I watched from the kitchen window as my ex's car pulled up. Judith was already outside watering her plants even though it had rained yesterday. Alric happened to be trimming his hedge next door, which seemed like quite a coincidence. My ex and his girlfriend started loading boxes from the garage while avoiding any eye contact with me. Chelsea watched from her bedroom window but stayed upstairs like we'd discussed. The whole thing took 30 minutes and they drove away without saying a word. Judith came over afterward and we sat on the porch drinking coffee while Alric finished his yard work. The tears started before I even realized I was crying. I just sat there on my front steps shaking while Judith came over with a cup of tea and sat beside me without saying anything. Alric kept trimming his hedge, but I could tell he was watching to make sure we were okay. Chelsea must have seen me from her window because she came running down and wrapped her arms around both of us. We stayed like that for maybe 10 minutes, just holding each other while Judith rubbed my back. It hit me then how many people had shown up for us through all this mess. 3 days later, the community center coordinator called me in a panic because the venue for the fundraiser had canceled last minute due to a plumbing issue. I spent the morning calling every place I could think of, but nothing was available on such short notice. Then I remembered Octavia mentioning the gym had a big community room they used for special events. I drove straight there and found her at the front desk. She listened to my problem and immediately pulled up their calendar. The room was free that Saturday night and she offered it without charging us anything. She said helping the community was what good neighbors did, and besides, I was one of their best members now. The whole planning committee was amazed when I told them I'd solved the venue crisis. We spent the next 2 weeks getting everything ready, and I basically ran the whole thing since I was the only one who knew how to coordinate vendors and volunteers. The night of the fundraiser, about 100 people showed up, which was more than we expected. I managed the silent auction table while Chelsea helped with the raffle tickets. We raised almost $8,000 for the community center programs. The coordinator pulled me aside at the end and asked if I'd consider taking a part-time paid position planning their quarterly events. The pay wasn't much, but it was something, and I said yes right away. The next week, Chelsea and I were walking into the gym for our regular Tuesday class when she grabbed my arm and pointed at the parking lot. Her dad's car was sitting there with the engine running, but when he saw us looking, he drove off fast. An hour later, I had an email from him saying I'd turned everyone against him, including his own daughter. He called me manipulative and said I was poisoning Chelsea's mind. I forwarded everything to Theo, who said it was borderline harassment, and definitely showed he was watching the gym, which violated the spirit of the protective order. Theo sent a formal letter to my ex's lawyer the next morning outlining the parking lot incident and the hostile email. The response came back within hours saying his client had been advised to maintain strict compliance with all court orders. Theo told me this was good because it meant the lawyer was taking it seriously and would keep my ex in line. A few days later, Alric and I went for coffee after spin class like we'd been doing every week. We decided to walk through the park since it was nice out. I wasn't paying attention to the path and tripped on a raised piece of pavement. Alric caught my hand to steady me, and we both kind of froze for a second. Neither of us pulled away right away, and we walked a few more steps still holding hands before we both got embarrassed and let go. We didn't talk about it, but something had shifted between us. When I told Chelsea later, she smiled and said she liked him and thought he was good for me. That weekend, 2 of my neighbors knocked on my door asking if I could help them organize their garages and closets. They'd seen my work at the fundraiser and heard I was starting to do professional organizing. I was so nervous quoting them an hourly rate, but they both agreed right away and said it sounded fair for professional help. My first session was at the house 3 doors down, and their garage was a disaster. It took me 6 hours to sort through everything and create a system that made sense. The owner was so happy she paid me on the spot and added an extra $20 as a tip. That night, Chelsea helped me design simple business cards on her computer, and we ordered 100 of them online. 2 days later, Chelsea's college orientation packet arrived in a thick envelope. She tore it open and we spread everything out on the kitchen table. There were forms to fill out and dates for campus visits and move-in weekend information. We decided to make a road trip out of the campus tour next month, just the 2 of us. She was excited about college, but I could tell she was worried about leaving me alone. We talked about how we'd both be starting new chapters, and that was okay. My second organizing client had a walk-in closet that needed a complete overhaul. I spent 5 hours creating zones for different types of clothes and installing shelf dividers I'd bought at the Container Store. When I sent my first real invoice through the app, Chelsea had helped me set up. The client paid within an hour. By the end of the week, I had 3 more bookings, and my little calendar was starting to fill up. Then my ex sent another email saying he kept remembering items he'd left behind and wanted to arrange monthly pickups to get them. I typed out my response carefully, saying all his belongings had been returned and the matter was closed. Before sending it, I forwarded it to Theo, who said it was perfect because it was firm but not hostile. I was finally learning how to set boundaries and stick to them. 3 weeks passed before the final hearing date arrived. Theo met me outside the courthouse and we reviewed our documentation one more time. My ex showed up with his lawyer and they huddled in the corner whispering. The judge called us into the courtroom and reviewed all the evidence from the past months. My ex's lawyer stood up and said his client had enrolled in counseling and wanted to modify the order for Chelsea's upcoming graduation. The judge looked at me and I nodded because Chelsea deserved both parents at her big moments. She extended the protective order for another year, but added specific allowances for school events with advance notice required. My ex had to stay on the opposite side of any venue and couldn't approach me directly. It wasn't perfect, but it was workable, and most importantly, it was all documented officially. The legal stuff finally felt finished. My gym routine had become completely normal by then. I knew all the morning regulars by name, and Octavia always waved when I walked in. The woman from the elliptical had become my workout buddy, and we spotted each other on weights 3 times a week. Nobody mentioned the incident anymore, and new members had no idea anything had ever happened there. This was my space again, and I felt comfortable claiming it. Chelsea texted me one afternoon that she was meeting her dad for lunch to discuss college plans. I stayed home organizing a client's pantry and tried not to worry about how it would go. She came back 2 hours later and said he actually listened to her talk about her major choices without making it about himself. He asked real questions about dorm life and campus activities. She said their relationship would never be what it was before, but maybe they could build something different. The community center's second quarterly event was coming up, and I'd spent weeks planning every detail. Alric showed up early to help set up tables and string lights in the gymnasium. The dance instructor I'd hired insisted everyone try the basic salsa steps before dinner. Alric and I stumbled through the moves and kept stepping on each other's feet. We were both laughing, so hard we could barely stand up straight. He was becoming such a steady presence in my life, and we were taking everything slow, but it felt right. My home organization business was starting to feel real. I went to the county office and officially registered it with a simple name. My first client gave me a great referral to her sister who needed help with her home office. That sister recommended me to 2 more neighbors. By the end of the week, my calendar for the next month had 5 appointments scheduled. It was small, but it was mine, and I'd built it myself. Then my ex sent an email out of nowhere. He wrote that he would respect the gym boundaries going forward and thanked me for organizing the garage items so efficiently before pickup. There was no anger or sarcasm in it. I showed it to Theo, who said I didn't need to respond, but should save it for our records. Some endings really are just quiet acceptance. Sunday morning, Chelsea pulled out the pancake mix and started heating the griddle. I turned on music while gathering eggs and milk from the fridge. The old song we used to dance to came on, and without thinking, I started swaying while whisking the batter. Chelsea grinned at me from across the kitchen. "There's my mom," she said simply. She was right because I really was back. My phone buzzed with a text from Alric asking about coffee tomorrow, and I sent back a smiley face. Monday's spin class arrived, and I walked straight to my favorite bike in the middle row. The instructor gave me a knowing smile as I adjusted the seat height. I wasn't the scared woman who'd hidden in the back row 10 weeks ago. I was stronger now and steadier too. The room filled up with familiar faces who'd shown up when I needed them most. This was my life now, and I'd built it myself. Thanks for letting me question things right alongside you. It's been a ride just wondering together. Until next time, take care out there. Like the video, it helps more than you think.